Not everything has to be about you, my dad messaged as I sat alone at my graduation dinner. 2 hours later, my uncle posted, proud of the real winner. It was my sister holding a chess trophy. I paid the $2,700 bill, drove home, and canceled every bill I'd been quietly covering for the entire family for years. By morning, my phone was exploding. I, 26M, graduated from medical school last week after 7 years of grinding through pre-med and then 4 brutal years of medical training. My family had promised to celebrate with a nice dinner at the upscale steakhouse downtown, where I'd made reservations for 8 people 2 months in advance. I sat alone at the table for 45 minutes, checking my phone every few seconds, watching other families laugh and celebrate their graduates at nearby tables. The waitress kept asking if I wanted to order appetizers while we waited for my party. I kept saying 5 more minutes, certain they were just running late. Finally, my phone buzzed with a message from Dad. He told me that not everything had to be about me, and that my sister had won first place in the regional chess tournament today. The family had decided to celebrate her victory instead because it was more important than my graduation dinner. He said I should understand that her achievement was rare and special, while graduation was just expected. I stared at that message for a solid minute. 7 years of my life. Student loans that would take decades to pay off. Countless nights studying while my friends partied. Missing family events because I was in clinical rotations. Also, I could become a doctor and help people. But apparently, a chess trophy mattered more. The waitress approached again, and I told her I'd be dining alone. I ordered the most expensive steak on the menu, added lobster, got the premium wine pairing, and even ordered dessert. If I was going to eat alone on my graduation night, I might as well make it memorable. 2 hours later, while I was finishing my meal, Uncle Mike posted on Facebook. The photo showed my sister holding her trophy, surrounded by my entire extended family at what looked like a celebration dinner at the Italian restaurant across town. The caption read about being proud of the real winner in the family. Every family member had liked and commented with congratulations. Nobody had even acknowledged my graduation on social media. I paid the $2,700 bill without flinching. The irony wasn't lost on me that I could afford this expensive dinner because of a trust fund my late grandfather had left specifically for my education expenses. The same grandfather who used to tell me that education was the greatest gift anyone could give themselves. During the drive home, something shifted inside me. I started thinking about all the ways I'd been quietly supporting my family over the past few years. Dad's car payments that I'd taken over when he got laid off last year. Mom's medical bills from her surgery that insurance didn't fully cover. My sister's chess club fees, tournament travel expenses, and private coaching sessions. Uncle Mike's mortgage payment that I'd helped with during his divorce. Even my cousin's college tuition that I'd been contributing to because his parents couldn't afford it. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for 20 minutes, adding up the numbers in my head. Over the past 3 years, I'd quietly contributed more than $40,000 to various family expenses. None of them knew the full extent of it because I'd always been discreet about the help, not wanting anyone to feel embarrassed or obligated. But tonight changed everything. I went inside and opened my laptop. First, I logged into my bank's website and canceled every automatic payment going to family members. Dad's car payment, done. Mom's medical payment plan, canceled. Sister's chess coaching fees, stopped. Uncle Mike's mortgage assistance, ended. Cousin's tuition contribution, finished. Then I sent individual messages to each family member explaining that due to my changing financial situation as I transitioned from student loans to resident salary, I could no longer provide financial assistance. I kept each message polite and professional, thanking them for understanding my position. I didn't mention the graduation dinner. I didn't mention feeling hurt or abandoned. I simply stated that my financial priorities were shifting and I needed to focus on paying down my own student debt and building my career. By 6 a.m., my phone started buzzing. Mom called first, panicking about her medical bills. She wanted to know what had happened and why I was suddenly cutting off help. She reminded me about how the family had always supported each other and that I shouldn't abandon them now that I was going to be a doctor with good money. Dad texted asking if I was having some kind of breakdown. He said my messages didn't make sense because I'd been helping everyone for years without any problems. He wanted to know what had suddenly changed and suggested I was being dramatic about something. My sister sent a long message explaining that her chess tournament had been really important and that the family had to prioritize it because these opportunities don't come often. She said I was being selfish for not understanding that my graduation was just a formality, while her tournament was a real achievement that required celebration. Uncle Mike called and left a voicemail asking if I was seriously going to leave him hanging on his mortgage payment. He reminded me that family helps family and that I'd committed to helping him through his rough patch. He said I was being unreliable and that he'd never expected me to just abandon him without warning. My cousin texted asking about tuition money for next semester. She said her parents were counting on my contribution and that she might have to drop out if I didn't help. She wanted to know if this was some kind of joke or if I was really going to destroy her education over whatever was bothering me. The messages kept coming all morning. Each family member seemed genuinely confused about why I was suddenly withdrawing financial support. None of them connected it to missing my graduation dinner. They all seemed to think this was some random decision I'd made for no apparent reason. Around noon, Mom called again. This time she was crying and told me that Dad's car was going to be repossessed if the payment didn't go through. She begged me to reconsider and said the family was falling apart because of my sudden decision. She reminded me about all the sacrifices they'd made for my education over the years. That conversation made me laugh, which probably wasn't the reaction she expected. I asked her to specify what sacrifices the family had made for my education. She mentioned driving me to school sometimes and helping me study for tests in high school. She talked about buying my textbooks and school supplies. I reminded her that my education had been funded by scholarships, student loans, and Grandpa's trust fund. The family hadn't paid for any of my college or medical school expenses. I'd lived independently since I was 18 and had never asked for financial help from anyone. In fact, I'd been the one providing financial help to everyone else for years. She got quiet when I laid out those facts. By evening, the family group chat that I'd been excluded from for months suddenly added me back in. Apparently, they'd been discussing the situation all day and had decided to have a family meeting to address my behavior. They wanted me to come over Sunday evening to talk through what they called my concerning decisions. I declined the meeting invitation politely. I told them I was starting my medical residency in 2 weeks and needed to focus on preparing for that transition. I suggested they use the time to figure out alternative arrangements for their various financial needs since I'd given them advance notice. Dad responded immediately, asking what had gotten into me and why I was acting like this. He said the family had always been there for me and that I was being ungrateful for all their support over the years. He wanted to know why I was suddenly trying to punish everyone. I finally decided to explain the connection. I told them about sitting alone at my graduation dinner while they celebrated my sister's chess trophy. I mentioned the Facebook post calling her the real winner. I explained how it felt to pay a $2,700 bill alone while my entire family was across town celebrating something they considered more important than my medical degree. The group chat went silent for about an hour. Then Uncle Mike responded saying I was being oversensitive and that I should have just joined them at sister's celebration instead of sitting alone feeling sorry for myself. He said I was acting like a child who didn't get enough attention at someone else's birthday party. My sister added that her chess tournament really was more important because she'd actually won something, while graduation was just finishing what I was supposed to finish anyway. She said I was trying to make everything about myself when other people had accomplishments worth celebrating too. Dad backed them up, saying I was being dramatic about missing one dinner when there would be plenty of opportunities to celebrate later. He pointed out that I was financially stable enough to afford an expensive dinner alone, so clearly I didn't need family support anyway. That response clarified everything for me. Update 1. The next morning, I got a call from Mom crying about Dad's car situation again. The dealership had contacted them about the missed payment, and they were threatening repossession within the week. She begged me to make just this one payment while they figured out alternative arrangements. I told her I understood their situation was stressful, but that I'd given advance notice about discontinuing financial assistance. I suggested they contact the dealership to discuss payment options or consider selling the car for something more affordable. She accused me of being vindictive and punishing the family for one missed dinner. She said I was destroying relationships over something petty and that everyone made mistakes sometimes. She reminded me that family forgives each other and moves forward together. I asked her what specifically the family was planning to forgive me for. She couldn't answer that question directly. Later that day, my cousin called sobbing about her tuition situation. Her parents had been counting on my contribution for her final semester, and now she was facing the possibility of not graduating because they couldn't cover the costs alone. She begged me to reconsider at least her situation since she wasn't even involved in whatever had happened with my graduation dinner. I felt genuinely bad for her because she was right that she hadn't been involved. But I explained that I'd been contributing to multiple family members' expenses for years, and the total amount had become unsustainable with my own financial obligations. I suggested she look into emergency student loans or speak with the financial aid office about payment plans. She asked why I couldn't just help everyone a little bit less instead of cutting everyone off completely. That was actually a fair question that made me think about my approach. But I realized that partial help would just create ongoing negotiations and expectations about how much I should contribute to each person's needs. Uncle Mike showed up at my apartment that evening without calling first. He wanted to discuss the mortgage situation face-to-face because he said text messages weren't adequate for serious financial discussions. He seemed genuinely confused about why I was suddenly unwilling to help him when I'd been reliable about the payments for over a year. I let him in and made coffee while he explained his position. He said he'd been counting on my help to get back on his feet after his divorce, and that he was close to being able to handle the payments independently. He just needed a few more months of assistance to stabilize his situation. I told him I understood his position and that I wasn't trying to punish him personally. But I explained that I'd been quietly helping multiple family members for years, and the combined financial obligation had become too much to sustain while paying my own student loans and preparing for residency salary. He asked why I hadn't mentioned being financially stretched before. That was a good question. I realized I'd never communicated clearly about my own financial situation because I'd wanted to help without making anyone feel guilty about accepting assistance. We talked for about 2 hours, and he helped me understand how my sudden withdrawal of support was affecting everyone. From their perspective, I'd been providing help consistently for years, so they'd naturally incorporated that assistance into their financial planning. My abrupt cancellation was creating genuine hardships that they hadn't prepared for. I appreciated his honest conversation, but I also explained how the graduation dinner situation had made me realize that my financial contributions weren't creating the family relationships I'd hoped they would. I'd been quietly supporting everyone while feeling increasingly disconnected from family events and decisions. He asked if there was a way to rebuild the family relationships while also addressing the financial situation. He suggested that maybe the money issues and relationship issues were separate problems that needed different solutions. That conversation gave me a lot to think about. Update 2. Over the weekend, I spent time reviewing my finances and thinking about Uncle Mike's perspective. He was right that I'd created financial dependencies without communicating clearly about my own limitations or expectations. I decided to reach out to each family member individually to have honest conversations about both the financial situation and the underlying relationship issues. I started with Mom and Dad. I called and asked if we could meet for coffee to discuss things calmly. They agreed, though Dad seemed skeptical about whether I was ready to be reasonable about the family situation. We met at a quiet cafe on Sunday afternoon. I began by acknowledging that my sudden withdrawal of financial support had created hardships I hadn't fully considered. I apologized for not communicating better about my financial limitations or giving more advance notice. But I also explained how the graduation dinner situation had affected me. I told them about sitting alone for 45 minutes, paying a $2,700 bill by myself, and seeing the Facebook post celebrating my sister as the real winner. I described how that experience had made me realize that my financial contributions hadn't translated into feeling valued or included in important family moments. Mom immediately started defending the chess tournament celebration, saying it was a rare opportunity and that they'd assumed I would understand. Dad added that I could have joined them at the restaurant if I'd really wanted to be with family instead of insisting on my own dinner plans. I asked them to imagine how they would have felt in my position. If they had achieved something they'd worked toward for 7 years, made dinner reservations for the family, and then been abandoned for someone else's event, how would that have affected them? Dad said I was comparing apples to oranges because graduation was expected while my sister's chess victory was unexpected and special. He maintained that I should have been flexible enough to adjust my plans when something more important came up. That response helped me understand that we had fundamentally different perspectives on the situation. They genuinely believed that my sister's tournament was more worthy of family celebration than my medical school graduation. They weren't trying to hurt me. They just had different values about what achievements deserved recognition. I told them I understood their perspective, but that I couldn't continue providing financial support to a family that didn't value my achievements or include me in important decisions. I explained that the money I'd been contributing needed to go toward paying my student loans and building my own financial stability. Mom asked if there was any way to repair the relationship and find a compromise on the financial support. She suggested that maybe I could continue helping with the most critical expenses like Dad's car and her medical bills, while the family worked on including me better in future events. I told them I'd consider a modified arrangement, but that I needed to see genuine changes in how the family treated me before I'd be comfortable providing financial help again. I suggested we start with rebuilding our relationships and worry about money later. Dad seemed frustrated with that approach and said I was holding the family's financial stability hostage to get attention and special treatment. He argued that I was being manipulative by linking money to family relationships. That comment made me realize we weren't going to reach an understanding easily. Update 3. After the conversation with my parents, I had similar discussions with my sister, Uncle Mike, and my cousin over the following week. Each conversation helped me understand different aspects of the situation. My sister was the most direct about her perspective. She told me that she'd worked just as hard for her chess achievements as I had for medical school, and that her tournament victory was actually more impressive because it was competitive while graduation was just meeting requirements. She said the family had celebrated her because she'd beaten other people, not just completed a program. I asked her if she understood why I might have wanted family support on my graduation day after 7 years of medical training. She said she understood, but that life doesn't always work out perfectly, and that I should have been mature enough to reschedule when something more important came up. Her honesty was actually helpful because it clarified that she genuinely believed her chess tournament was more significant than my graduation. She wasn't trying to minimize my achievement out of spite. She just valued competitive victories over educational milestones. Uncle Mike was more apologetic about the whole situation. He acknowledged that the family had handled my graduation poorly and that I had legitimate reasons to feel hurt. But he also emphasized how much my financial help had meant to him during a difficult time, and how suddenly losing that support was creating serious problems for his housing situation. My cousin was mostly focused on her own situation. She appreciated that I'd been helping with tuition, but said she'd never asked for that assistance and didn't want to be caught in the middle of family drama. She just wanted to finish school without financial stress. After all these conversations, I realized that the money and relationship issues were more complex than I'd initially understood. The family members I'd been helping had genuinely appreciated the support, but they'd also started taking it for granted as a permanent arrangement. My sudden withdrawal was creating real hardships, but my frustration about feeling undervalued was also legitimate. I decided on a compromise approach. I contacted each family member and offered to provide temporary assistance for critical expenses while they developed alternative arrangements. I agreed to help Uncle Mike with 2 more mortgage payments while he explored refinancing options. I offered to cover my cousin's final semester tuition since she was close to graduating. I told my parents I'd help with 1 month of Dad's car payment and Mom's medical bills while they figured out other solutions. But I made it clear that this assistance was temporary and that I expected the family to include me appropriately in future events and decisions. I also said I needed acknowledgement that my graduation had been an important achievement worthy of family celebration. Dad initially resisted the conditions about family treatment, saying I was trying to buy respect and attention. But Mom convinced him that they needed to rebuild trust if they wanted any kind of ongoing relationship with me. My sister never directly apologized for the graduation situation, but she did invite me to her next chess tournament and asked if I wanted to plan a belated graduation celebration together. The temporary financial arrangement gave everyone time to adjust their expectations and develop new plans. More importantly, it let me maintain family relationships while establishing clearer boundaries about how I expected to be treated. 6 months later, the financial dependencies were mostly resolved, but the family dynamics had improved significantly. I learned to communicate more directly about my needs and expectations, while they learned to value my achievements more appropriately. The graduation dinner incident taught me that financial generosity doesn't automatically create the relationships you want, but it also showed me that family conflicts can be resolved through honest communication and mutual respect. My residency has been demanding but rewarding, And I'm grateful I took the time to address these family issues before my career got even more intense. Sometimes you have to be willing to disrupt comfortable arrangements to build healthier relationships.